Okay, my name is Maurice Otieno. I come from Kenya and I work for the National Environment Management Authority, which is a regulatory authority within the Ministry of Water, Environment and Natural Resources of the Kenya government.
Okay, can you identify 2 or 3 entry points for developing a NAP in Kenya? For example, are there any policy or institutional measures already in place that can facilitate the NAP process?
Yeah, I think in Kenya we have developed the National Climate Change Response Strategy, which we are implementing. We have also developed the National Climate Change Action Plan that we have started to implement. We are working on a climate change policy now, and also climate change bill, which is getting ready for parliamentary presentation. But within the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Water, Environment and Natural Resources, the government has established a climate change secretariat, which is having about 9 staff with different kind of specialty. Most of the ministries now within the government of Kenya do have climate change secretariat, which are active and are following up on the implementation and mainstreaming of climate change activities within the ministries, including the ministry that is involved in national development planning, that is the Ministry of Devolution and Planning, as well as the Treasury, which is responsible for financing all the government activities.
What capacity gaps do you see in your country in relation to adaptation planning, both at individual level and at institutional level? For example, what would you say are the 3 most important skills necessary to develop and implement a NAP?
Kenya has embarked on a NAP process, which is housed within the Ministry of Water, Environment and Natural Resources. The country also have undertaken several vulnerability and adaptation assessment through the efforts of developing the National Climate Change Response Strategy, developing the Technology Needs Assessment, developing of the Kenya National Climate Change Action Plan. And we have also a very strong meteorology department that has been undertaking climate data registration for quite a long time, and have undertaken present and future analysis. But in terms of capacity, I would want to mention that this is a very dynamic area, and the new knowledge are emerging every day. I might not say that we have the capacity, but I would want to encourage that we encourage the formulators or those who are involved in leading knowledge area in vulnerability assessment, adaptation assessment, to engage with us, because we know there are new things which are coming up every day. At this point in time, I would not say that we are adequate in terms of capacity at individual level or even at institutional level. For one, the country has undergone some political transformation. We have developed a 2-tier government when we adopted the Constitution in 2010, which has introduced the county governments. So you'll find that the national government has some semblance of capacity with respect to mainstreaming climate change through vulnerability assessment and adaptation assessment. But the county government do not have capacity at present. So it would be very, very important that they are also brought into the training perspective of all elements related to climate change, all elements related to vulnerability assessment and adaptation, all elements of adaptation, policy formulation, and also mitigation actions, including ways of mainstreaming of climate change into the county government planning agenda. I think these are field which is new, is only evolving because the county governments have just started working now. So I think there is a need for capacity development and improvement in these sectors. And so is the national government also. I think aspect of early warning systems, I think is not adequate. This needs to be improved. Aspect of networking, particularly through local area networks and ward area networks, because there are many, many people that are involved in generating of climate change data and information, particularly related to adaptation, including communities in the villages. There are things that they are doing which needs to be documented and archived and disseminated. And if a proper network is developed, some of these things can be, we can provide a platform through which this can be easily accessed. We have at the universities, as I mentioned earlier, I think the focus is still not very clear in terms of leading research in new areas of knowledge on climate change, mitigation on climate change, adaptation, because this is actually an evolving discipline. So there is need for the engagement of our universities, particularly with the United Nations Training Institute, to try and really make some of these things a reality and became because we have actually many universities who are doing many things in various disciplines, and we have centers of excellence also established in some of the universities. Like, for example, we have already a climate innovative center established at Strathmore University, which is one of the universities in Kenya, which is basically a follow-up of the technology needs assessment recommendation with a view of establishing climate change innovation centers. So I think the area of capacity building, I think, is not limited. We cannot say we have enough, because this is a very dynamic area. We really need to continue running with the leaders, or running after leaders of knowledge and capacity at individual level and even institutional level.
And how do you think the NAP-GSP could help with your adaptation plans and initiatives? Which kind of support do you think we can put forward?
Yeah, presently we have we are actually in the process of developing our NAP, and definitely I think we are going to reach a stage of prioritizing maybe what I would call the quick wins and the big wins for adaptation undertaking. This may require actually enormous a lot of funding. For example, in the energy sector, in the transport sector, or in the agricultural sector, because, for example, one of the vulnerability areas in my county is basically drought, because about 80% of Kenya is considered arid and semi-arid land. And the ravages of drought normally brings very drastic consequences in affecting the livelihood of communities which live in those areas. So in developing resilience to drought, that will require a lot of funding. Developing resilience to flooding will require a lot of funding. If you look at the ecosystem approach to adaptation, we have various ecosystems. For example, we have what we are calling water towers, because this is actually the origin of most of our rivers, which are running into the ocean or into Lake Victoria. And evidence generated has revealed that there has been a decline of discharges of rivers as a result of degradation of the water towers. So the country, as part of this flagship project, has actually embarked on an aggressive afforestation of water towers so that it can be enriched to help improve the recharge into the rivers, which will definitely affect, which will definitely mean that the volumes of dams in our country, which are responsible for generating HIP, improves, and you know, energy is the driver of economy. The country has also embarked on expansion of their geothermal potential. And this is actually an investment that requires a lot of financing. So it's an area also that perhaps could be a very big opportunity. We have also looked at the transport sector as another area which is basically vulnerable, because when the rains come, sometimes you find that the bridges are washed away, and the rivers ends up flooding areas which could be important for transport. So the infrastructure in transport is another area which is, that could also be looked at in future. And also food security, because Kenya is rapidly growing in terms of population, and more often and not, particularly in the semi-arid and arid lands, we have always asked for support in terms of grains. But now we are embarking on a large-scale infrastructure, irrigation infrastructure development, so that we can have agriculture, irrigated agriculture throughout the year. And this, we visualize, would really limit our dependence on rain-fed agriculture, which has been seriously disrupted by climate change. So I think those are some of the major areas that if the country is supported, then definitely would improve our resilience to climate change vagaries. This would be at the national level, but at the county level, I did mention that we are at the nascent stage of establishing the county governments. So if that is repeated in the country level, you see the scope is enormous of looking for support, even for the county government, to try and put the infrastructure, start putting the system in place, and also developing climate change resilient and green growth.
Okay, thank you very much. And last question, are there any success stories or early lessons learned from NAP, and are you facing any specific challenges at this stage in implementing and developing a NAP?
Yeah, the challenges, we could have a few challenges, particularly of resources, and as you know, the resources are not, resources are limited at the national level because we are, the national resources, they are competing with other demands, not only for development, also maybe in health and many other things. So inadequate resources actually would be one of the greatest challenges. The other challenge also would now bringing the county government up to speed with respect to adaptation and mitigation, particularly of climate change elements. This actually brought a new dimension because it has actually sucked a lot of resources that need to be allocated to the county governments. Because now each county government, they have 47 of them, and each has developing its plans, developing its policies, developing its development agenda, and doing its budgeting, and demanding finance from the national coffers. So I think that is one of the greatest challenges now. The other challenge now would be now the capacity to assist mainstream climate change agenda, that is adaptation, and even developing the NAPs at the county level, because each of the county level perhaps need to develop its National Adaptation Plan, because they are actually now entities. But for the national one, each of the counties need to have to develop and each of the counties also need to have developed capacities to undertake assessment at their own level. You see, the assessment that were done was at the national level. But you see now when you get to the county government, each of the county really need to have its own assessment.